All right, I'm going to start by testing my equipment. Make sure that I'm broadcasting. It says I've been live for 26 seconds. No viewers as of yet. And I don't even know if the microphone is working. All right. The title is America as We Know It. America is a pretty big idea. We all know from our history lessons what we've been through, what our country is about, and we all kind of get the same idea as to what it's going through and where it's going to end up. Eventually, I want to get into some things that maybe some people haven't thought of yet, or maybe you have and you're keeping it close to your chest, or maybe they're just some things that go unsaid. I don't know, maybe they're common sense type things, but we'll see. But everybody is prepping, getting their house in order, having supplies of food, ammo, weapons, water filtration, radios for communication, first aid supplies. There's two things. One, you got to think of, well, is that stuff going to go away? And is that stuff going to do you any good if you're A, planning on bugging out, or B, holed up somewhere and you can't resupply when you run out of what you've got? So there's some answers to that are pretty obvious, like have a network of individuals that all help maintain and be self-sufficient and supportive of each other. That's a good plan, but then what happens, what do you do when they turn on you? And some people's answers is, oh well, I just fight them off. Well, then you're down one person or more. So let's keep some things in mind here. Now, I'm not for one gang or another, or one entity or corporation or another, or anything like that. I'm not endorsing any organization of any kind. But your city, state, and federal governments are the largest, most powerful uh, entities that control the things that people do, how they do them, when they do them, what comes in, what goes out. I'll give you an example. The public education system, as messed up as it is, gets funding from the federal government, and they'll do anything to keep that funding coming in. These companies will do the same thing. They don't want what you have. So buy all your silver and gold and tell me that's going to be worth something when there's a, when it all goes down. It's just a scheme for them to make more money. Yeah, you might get a little trade here and there, some barter or something with people locally, but that's about it. That's if anybody wants to part with their goods. Me in my situation, I want to take what I got and not part with any of it. If things get really bad, what makes you think anyone's going to want to share or be part of a community? And if you think you're going to be nomadic and go from place to place with your little supply caches that you've got dug around, hopefully before anybody else finds them, and just live off that, you're sorely mistaken. You see, I spent my entire adult life either overseas in third world countries or in inhospitable environments. And I paid attention to a couple of things. And I paid attention to what people do when there is no government. And I paid attention to what they do when there is massive government. And by massive, I mean intrusive and overwhelming. And I guess I'll let you in a little secret to give you Iraq as an example. What led to the vast majority of the insurgency was the failure of government. The lack of the government, local government's ability to control or maintain or assist and aid its people and organize them to be productive. So they all run around doing crazy stuff and they form small groups, and those groups become cells, and those cells attack the upcoming or growing government. and they get more and more desperate as time goes on. And then they start doing really crazy stuff I won't get into. But if things go down here in America, what makes you think it's going to be any different? I'll be right back with some more. Well, we're more than 10 minutes into this, and I have nobody watching, which is perfectly fine. I'm kind of just airing out my thoughts, I guess. But what I was getting at was, if certain things happen in one country and they go down a certain way, uh, because of the failure of government or the failure of uh, its ability to defend itself, and its people, uh, then of course the same formula applies over here. Now, our founding fathers were really smart, and they gave us the Second Amendment, and it says that we can be armed and form well-regulated militias, to prevent against hostile force, whether it be foreign or domestic. But this whole like prepping for the collapse or EMP or, you know, I don't care if you're prepping for zombies. The way that people behave in those situations is borderline animalistic. And I don't care if you've got 100 guns. I mean, number one, unless you're building an army, you don't need 100 guns. I'm all about the Second Amendment, but I have weapons that I'm effective with, that I'm trained with, that I can rely upon 100% every time. So don't let some of these preppers out there fool you into saying, "Oh, you got to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on all this BS." You just need a few simple things. You got to be able to hunt, and we can get more into that later. But I mean, you got to be able to hunt. You got to be able to collect water and purify it. Water filtered straws are great. You can take a towel and some charcoal and do the same thing. You got to be able to stay clean and dry. You got to know your surroundings. That's probably the most important thing is know details about your surroundings. Because if you're on the move one day gathering supplies or resources or something, and especially if you're in an urban environment where you got to run into people and somebody starts trailing you, you got to know how to alternate your route and still get to where you're going. And then get back. I'm not saying don't go out and buy stores of food and supplies and stuff like that. Like do those things anyways. Like yeah, when you're at the grocery store, buy an extra couple cans of beef stew or something. You know, have that extra that you put aside, you know, constantly. You should have been doing this for years. But I'm going to get into the stuff that nobody else talks about. Before I do, the basics, like what I was explaining, some of those things are fundamental. Now, I'm also not an anarchist. I worked, I spent time and still believe um, in our great military. And it is the most powerful military on the planet, bar none. Like, nobody even comes close, to be realistic. But I think that the things we don't talk about are like what happens when you don't have food, what happens when you don't have supplies, what happens when somebody's got something that you don't, that you need, and they're not going to give it up. What do you do then? Do you let your child starve? What happens when you're in urban Seattle and a bunch of freaks come out of nowhere and they attack your family while you're on foot patrol? Can you all run as fast as at the same speed, as fast as you can? No. There's things that people are going to want when they're without them in a crisis that a lot of you haven't even thought of yet. When the government goes quote unquote underground or is or we have limited access while they fix everything. I'm not saying they can't, I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying, you know, it just may not go the way we think it's going to go. DHS says, you know, you need at least 6 months worth of supplies before the grid goes back up in case of an event. Okay. 6 months in a dangerous environment, that's a long time. I'll be happy to make it a month. But the things that people aren't thinking about. What about when somebody attacks you or your family for food and you don't have food to give them? What do you think they're going to eat 6 months down the road? What do you think they're going to do before they eat? It's a nightmare. These are the things that happen in third world countries. These are the things that happen every day around the world that people don't pay attention to. America is like the Emerald City. It's majestic. It sits high on top of a hill, away from all the darkness. The rest of the world is sick. And it doesn't matter how much money the Clinton Foundation throws at it, or Al Gore throws at it, or anybody else throws at it. Like, do you think they're in it to make other people's lives better? I know a lot of this stuff I'm saying is like, oh yeah, common sense. Everybody's known this for a long time. Um, but for those of you that don't have a year's worth of supply of food, don't have 500,000 rounds of ammo, don't have 55-gallon drums of water, those of you that, live in the city, in the suburbs, because when it happens, you're not going to have the choice to leave, really. If you're stuck in urban areas, they're going to close that shit off, stuff off and quarantine it. Pardon my language. In best case scenario, they're going to put people to work. Worst case scenario, they're just going to isolate them. But like I said, when there's like the limited government or no government at all, people start doing crazy things. Laws and church-like behavior go out the window. So here are some things to consider. In your planning, if you're in those urban and suburban environments, find out who has what. Know which ones to stay away from, know which ones to get close to. Trust nobody. Because you see, everything's going to be fast. It's all going to happen fast. It's not like the whole thing, you got to boil the frog slowly, otherwise it'll jump out of the pot. That's been going on for 100 years. They're getting ready to crank that sucker. They want to push us to the next level. I don't know, maybe that's why the rest of the world calls us imperialists. They see it. Or at least they see it that way. If you're in the city, if you're in the urban environment, you know who to talk to find out how to survive? Talk to a gangster. Believe it or not, he might have some advice that could do you some good. Talk to the police. They know their cities, they're beat inside and out. Talk to the firemen, the EMS. If you run into a National Guard troop or soldier or reservist or militiaman, 3%er, I don't care. Talk to them. See what knowledge and wisdom they'll impart upon you. But everybody keeps pointing in the direction of saying that the grid's going to go down. There's going to be an EMP or CMF. Um, yeah, that's possible. They could do it on purpose. It could be an accident. It could be done by a foreign power. Terrorist attack. Doesn't matter. It's what people do when they have no electricity, no access to food, no access to water. They get medieval. That's what you have to deal with. These guys, I got 10 years supply of food, water, and ammunition and redundancies in place. And that's great. You know what? I'm going to hit your house first. Or I'm going to ambush your convoy. That's the other thing. Don't talk about your preps. Don't put it on TV. Don't advertise. Because other people aren't just the ones watching it. Other governments are watching it. Criminal organizations are watching it. Get good with your EMS. You're probably going to need medical supplies. Get good with your nurses and doctors. Know your routes ahead of time to these places, to these people. But be careful, because you run up on one of them the wrong time, they may treat you as a foe, not a friend. This is, after the fact. But beforehand, you want urban survival? Get to know your assets. Because these people are people too. Like, they're just like you. I'll be right back. Well, 30 minutes in, still no chatter. Sorry, I had to take care of something. But I don't know, maybe this will get to somebody. Maybe it'll just put some ideas in people's heads. Get them thinking about how serious the situation really is. And I'm not saying, like, don't prep. I'm not saying that at all. I'm all for being prepared for the situation. In fact, the first major decision of my life uh, was my adult life, excuse me, was to be prepared for something that was overwhelming. And I got it right. Now, I mean, I haven't gotten everything right, but I got that right. Pretty confident in that. So do your preps. Get your food, get your water. Don't forget about the elements. Keep clothes for the appropriate weather, especially rain. You want to stay dry. Socks, boots. It's better than getting a toe banged up or busted ankle. Think of the little things, like the stuff that you take for granted on a day-to-day basis. Oh, it's great. I got my brand new Air Force Ones. It's nice. You're not running away from nobody in Air Force Ones. That's the other thing. Stuff's going to be fast. You got to get faster. If you're not exercising to some degree, or I don't have some conditioning, I'm not saying you got to go out there and be a meathead. Like, that's ridiculous. But, go running every once in a while. Know where your limit's at.
do it with weight every once in a while. So, you can carry equipment, supplies on the move. Trying to think. My mind wanders a little bit every once in a while, but some of the worst stuff is most likely to happen, and that's harder to prepare for than, oh, look, I've got a generator with plenty of fuel. I can live with electricity while nobody else has any. Those are all mechanical things, like physical things, materialistic things. If you find yourself in a situation where you're outnumbered, the investment in running that you made beforehand is a prep. And that costs you nothing but your time and your energy, maybe some water. But having 500,000 rounds of ammunition and not being able to shoot in rapid succession, under stress, under fire, in enclosed environments, all that ammo's not going to do you any good. I mean, yeah, it means that you don't have to resupply on ammunition for a while. That's a plus. Okay. But if I'm getting shot at, what do you think I'm going to do after I'm done taking care of him? I'm going to take what he's got and I'm add it to my collection. And I'm going to keep doing that. Granted, these are worst case scenarios. Best case scenario, the government does its thing, it assists the public, so on and so forth. Let's hope it stays that way. But there's going to be people out there that are just going to rape, pillage, and plunder. And they might do it by the hundreds. You might see entire towns go into the next town and raid it. Entire neighborhoods, sacking entire neighborhoods. Teach your kids. Here's a scenario. What if they introduce an airborne disease or virus that kills everybody at a certain age or certain physical development? And then there's just a bunch of kids running around. You got to teach them same things: how to gather water, how to gather food, how to live off the land, how to fight, how to run, how to drive. If there's fuel, if they can drive, I'm just saying these things, like some of these things we teach them anyways, but other things you've got to teach them, that like we shield them with or from in our daily routines. They watch cartoons while we watch adult films and rated R movies and violence and everything else, and we find it entertaining. Oh, it's all great. It's entertainment, but like imagine your kids not being woke up when the ball drops. And whether you're there or not, they got to process it. America's become weak. In the 1950s and 60s, kids got under their desks, hid in the hallways in case of a nuclear strike. Nowadays, we got, is it gender dysphoria or fluidity? Like, do what you want in your own time. I don't care. Call yourself whatever you want. But you see where we're going? We went from an America where the threat was real to this is a joke. And maybe it's because we've gotten too strong, too powerful, too rich, too whatever. Because when you compare us to everybody else, like we all live like kings. Well, we're pushing the 45-minute mark and 0 people watching. I'm probably in the stream here pretty soon. See if anybody catches it later. And if somebody does and there's some interest in the things that I'm saying, then I will do another stream. Who's the cat?
Yeah, he just jumped over there.
Oh, you sneaking up on him?
Yep. I'm trying to grab him.
You're silly.
And there's some on the bottom shelf where my Legos are. And there's like paper in there.
Say that again.
One second. I'm talking about this.
Oh, put that away. Put that away. That's the alarm system. So maybe next time I'm on, I'll end up with someone watching, and I'll be able to get some feedback on what I'm saying. Maybe a little bit of a conversation or something can be started. See, I can't even tell if anybody can even hear this, so I won't know until I end the stream and try to watch it after the fact. But I wanted to try this out and see how it works and broadcast my first stream, see if we end up with any listeners at any point, and go from there. Everybody stay safe, be smart, and keep your weapon oriented downrange. Maybe I'll talk to you guys later. Out.